Welcome back to the Michigan Sports Media Network. And as always, we are here live on a Wednesday night. Now, I know things have changed a little bit as time has gone on, and it's going to continue to change a little bit as time goes on. So keep your ear to the floor on our next live show with football season coming around for me. We're going to have to kind of configure around my practices. So we will see how that goes, and we will try to bump back up to 2 days a week here shortly once the NFL dead season is over. Now, with that being said, as always, I am joined by James Gullett, our current Tigers and Red Wings reporter, if you want to call it that. But basically, the NHL free agency and draft is, well, the free agency is upon us, similar to the NBA. The draft is behind us. But today, we are going to start with some NBA conversation because that, in my opinion, is on the forefront of everyone's mind. We are in now day 3 of the NBA free agency. And, like we talked about on last week's show, it was before the draft last week, so we haven't really gotten the chance to necessarily talk about the draft yet. So we're going to kind of make this pretty quick here. Obviously, Cooper Flagg was the number one pick, and then it felt like there was really no way that he wasn't going to be the number one pick. And I feel like if the Mavs would have not picked him, that would have been a very Mavs thing to do for this season. But obviously, it went down, and he is now the newest Maverick. Next, we had Dylan Harper get selected second overall by the San Antonio Spurs, which I think that's a really good fit for them. It felt like the obvious pick kind of throughout the off season here. And then VJ Edgecombe from Baylor was the third round or the third pick by Philadelphia, which he will offer some scoring over there. I don't know, like, I don't dislike the pick, but I don't love it either. It seems like they kind of got a log jam at guard now, so maybe they play him at the wing. We'll kind of see how that goes. And then Con Knipple, which I love his name personally. I couldn't get over saying that during March Madness. But he was the fourth overall pick from Charlotte, which the Hornets, they got another kind of guard wing guy, which again, similar to the Sixers, they kind of got a log jam there right now. So we will see how that goes. But to round out the top five, Ace Bailey to Utah. Now, Ace Bailey has been sort of a weird situation here. He he didn't really want to go to Utah. It sounded like he had a handful of teams he wanted to go to, and if he didn't go to those teams, he was going to be upset. There were a lot of rumors going around about how he wasn't going to show up for the press conference or whatever, but he did. And he said in his press conference that he's very happy to be a Jazz. So I think we can kind of put that behind us now. But with that being said, we will kind of skip over the rest of these picks outside of the Pistons, okay? Because it would take so long to sit here and talk about every single draft pick. Now, the Pistons, they got Chaz Lanier out of Tennessee with their second round pick. I like him. I don't love him. I feel like, he's a second round pick. I mean, that's really all I got to say about that. Like, he's not a guy who's going to come in here, and command starting minutes or anything like that. I honestly would be surprised if he plays much at all for the Pistons next season. Last year in Tennessee, he did average 18 points per game, 3.9 rebounds, and 1.1 assists while shooting 43.1% from the field and 39.5% from three. So he has some, scoring chops to him, and he played obviously at a D1 SEC school. So he has a lot to like, but he is a little bit of an older prospect. I believe he's 23, so that could help us in the short term in terms of his ability to play. However, that doesn't help us in the long term in terms of development. Because unfortunately, a lot of these guys that come in the league, a little bit older, they don't have as much room to grow. So I see Chaz Lanier as honestly like a body for the Pistons at this point. He's going to be the end of the depth chart. Um, I would not be surprised if he, might get moved down to the G League every so often. I think that's kind of what we're going to get from him, at least in his first season. Um, going forward, I could see maybe his role expand a little bit, but I genuinely just don't see like a legitimate option out of Chaz Lanier. Now, what can you expect from a second round pick? Best case scenario, a lot of the time, is they even make the roster. Like a lot of the times, these second round picks don't even play. So I do think he's going to make the roster, and I do think it was a good pick for what we need. We will just kind of see how how that goes as time goes on. So moving on from the draft itself, we have had an absolute whirlwind free agency or just offseason in general now. So starting with, I will call our Around the NBA segment of this show because there is so much going on. We can't get to all of it, unfortunately, for us and you guys. I would love to sit here and talk for 3.5 hours, but we're not doing that because we just don't have the time. So with that being said, quickly run through this, my winners and losers, and then we will kind of stop to talk about it a little bit here. My winners and losers are, let's start with the winners. Denver, the Nuggets were a huge winner for me simply because, I mean, first of all, they got rid of Michael Porter Jr.'s contract. And I mean, that's a win in itself, if you ask me. I just feel like it's one of those contracts that when you gave it to him, it seemed like a good idea. He was young, he had scoring chops, and then he just kind of flatlined. Like once he got that contract, he plateaued and never really got much better. And I would even go as far as to say it got worse in the playoffs because when they had that finals run, he was pretty good. I mean, especially in the finals, he had a handful of clutch moments, clutch shots. But down the stretch this last playoffs, he just kind of shit the bed for lack of a better term. But with that being said, they flipped Michael Porter Jr. to the Brooklyn Nets, who are a better fit for him, I think, right now because they need somebody that can just score. Like, they don't have a lot going for him right now. And Cam Thomas, who we'll get to a little bit later, is still a free agent. So they have a long ways to go in terms of, or I'm sorry, the Brooklyn Nets have a long ways to go in terms of like being a winning team. So I think Michael Porter fits them perfectly as a volume scorer. He can get you 30. I just don't know how consistently. But with that being said, they flipped him for Cam Johnson, but they also had to include an unprotected first round pick. However, they saved, I think, like 16 to 18 million dollars over the season, or with the trade. So they were then able to trade for Jonas Valanciunas, sign Bruce Brown, and sign Tim Hardaway Jr. for the exact same amount of money that they would have if they would have just kept Michael Porter Jr. So absolute win for the Nuggets. They added, Cam Johnson, who's he's Michael Porter Jr. but more consistent, I think. A little bit better defender, I would say. I also like him a little bit more as a small ball four than I do like Michael Porter Jr. So that gives them a little bit more lineup versatility there. And then, of course, Pistons fans know Tim Hardaway Jr., he's going to do pretty well for them off the bench. I mean, he started for us last year, so Bruce Brown as well, solid role player. And then Jonas Valanciunas is probably the best backup center they've had since Jokic has been there. So really, really solid moves from them so far. And then next up, Houston is a really big winner for me this offseason. I think these are the obvious reasons. I mean, they traded for Kevin Durant. They didn't give up, a shit ton. They gave up a decent amount, but nothing that's going to really break their franchise in the future. No future firsts. Awesome. They re-signed Steven Adams, Aaron Holiday, Jeff Green, Jabari Smith, Jae'Sean Tate, and Fred VanVleet, and all of them were re-signed to relatively team-friendly deals. And then they went ahead and signed Clint Capella and Dorian Finney-Smith. So they really have, honestly, the second best team in the West right now. And I, as an OKC fan, I could even argue they might be better than us right now on paper because they have so much depth from point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, and so much versatility. I mean, they have three centers on their team that can give you legitimate starting production in their minutes. So that's awesome for them. And that's why they're probably my number one winner of the offseason. Just simply, they made that trade, didn't give up too much, and they signed a lot of really good players that'll fit what they need in the roles that they want them. So moving on to our next winner, in my opinion, like Atlanta might be like the biggest winner of the offseason. if Houston didn't exist, unfortunately, because Houston is cleaned up. But Atlanta's done pretty good themselves. They traded for Kristaps Porzingis, really didn't give up much of anything for him. They signed Luke Kennard to a 1 year deal, and then they signed Nikhil Alexander Walker to a 4 year deal, which Pistons fans, we all wanted him. We all love him. I It sucks that he didn't go to Detroit, but Atlanta got themselves a steal there. They did lose out on a couple guys though, like Karis LeVert, who ended up in Detroit, which we will get to in a little bit here. But with that being said, my last winner is the New York Knicks. Now, I know a lot of people might not agree with me on this one, but I just feel that the Knicks are doing a pretty good job of adding what they needed, right? They're not going out and making a bunch of trades or blowing the roster up. They're just adding what they needed, right? Jordan Clarkson, great addition for them. Great scorer off the bench. He's one of the best scorers off the bench, period, in the NBA right now. And then Gershon Yabusele, who I think is a very, very solid player, and I think he's going to really help them as their backup four, which seems like they kind of lacked last season. So they're really doing a really good job of adding to an already stacked roster that fits pretty well. So those are my winners in this NBA free agency. James, do you have any thoughts or comments on that list?
I do not. It's been going crazy between uh, the NBA and NHL drafts being mere days apart from each other. Their free agency starting mere days from each other. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but the Beasley news. There's just been a lot going on. So outside of our hometown teams, I haven't really branched out too much to see where everything else is going, other than where former Pistons are going, like Tim Hardaway and guys like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. Makes sense. So with that, moving on to my losers. Now I know nobody wants to be a loser, but there's gotta be somebody that lost in this in this competitive game. So with that being said, my losers are Indiana, simply because I mean, not only did Tyrese Halliburton tear his Achilles, but you also lost Miles Turner, and they have done absolutely nothing so far. They have not signed anyone, re-signed anyone. They have no additions. The only thing that they've done is lose their starting center. So hard to not put them as a loser, if you ask me. And obviously, their title aspirations are pretty much out the window next season. We'll see what happens the next year, but it's going to be a while for Halliburton to come back at 100%. And then my next winner, or next loser is Boston. Boston is a loser to me simply because of the fact that they had to dump salaries. They were forced to get rid of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and they didn't really do a lot to replace them. Now they're nowhere near my biggest loser. I think they'd be last on this list, simply because I don't hate what they did. To add to the team, but they lost Drew Holiday, Luke Cornett, and Porzingis, like I mentioned, and then they replaced them with George Niang, Luke Garza, Josh Minott, and Anthony Simons. That's a big downgrade for the Celtics. And like I mentioned, Tyrese Halliburton, he tore his Achilles. Jason Tatum also tore his Achilles. So it's going to be a punt on the season for the Celtics as well. Now, there have also been some rumors about Jaylen Brown or Derek White possibly being traded. I could see it, honestly, because of where Jason Tatum's at. It's going to be at least another year or two before he's back. And I think trading Derek White would make a lot of sense. I would hold on Jaylen Brown simply because he is, he's young and he's a star. Like he won Finals MVP for them. So unless some team is willing to give you like I was gonna say Kevin Durant or Luka Doncic package, and they both sucked. So not those. If you get like even Desmond, nah, you need more than that. I would say you would get like one like young up and coming player, one like veteran guy, one role player, and a bunch of first round picks. That's the only way I move Jaylen Brown personally. With that being said, my next loser is going to be the Utah Jazz. And there's a kind of a handful of reasons why I think they're losers. It does start with the draft for me, simply because they took Ace Bailey. Kind of seems like he's got some issues going on with his character, I guess would be the best way to put it. It seems like his his agent is not the greatest guy. I don't know if any of you guys saw the videos. I assume you did, but there were videos of Ace Bailey's agent going viral, and I will just say it is not a good look, and I will leave it at that. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way when they drafted him. They also traded Colin Sexton for basically nothing. I mean, they got Yusuf Nurkic and a second round pick. I'm sorry, but if I'm Detroit, I would have given up a lot more for Colin Sexton personally. I mean, he kind of would be perfect for what we need. But I digress. I feel like, you know, I feel like giving up Colin Sexton for nothing is already bad enough, but they also bought out Jordan Clarkson, who's a solid bench scorer. They waived Johnny Juzang, who's a decent young guy, and they really didn't do anything. They haven't added anybody through free agency or re-signing, so that is why they are another loser for me. And then last but not least, Golden State, and I will keep this short. Golden State is a loser. They have done literally fucking nothing. They have not signed anyone. They have not re-signed anyone. They have not traded for anyone. They are just kind of chilling. So I have heard rumors that Damian Lillard has been in contact with them. So keep that in mind. That would be kind of a cool situation there if Dame can go to Golden State. And actually, this is a great segue to our Damian Lillard segment. So Dame Lillard is looking to move back to the Western uh, uh, seaboard, or whatever you want to call it, the West Coast. And his family lives out there, so that's really why he wanted to get away from Milwaukee. Now, Golden State has apparently been in contact. I think that would be a really good fit. However, they also have to take into account he will not play at all this year. At best, he will be back during the playoffs next season, and I don't really know if I'd bank on that. So, are you really willing to sign him to a 1 year deal? I'm not, because what if you sign him to a 1 year deal, you pay him $15 million a year and he doesn't play a game. Like, that doesn't seem like a good bet for Golden State. However, if you can get him on a 2 year deal where the first year's a little bit lower in salary, the second year's a little bit higher, I think that would work out really great. Because imagine him backing up Steph Curry. I mean, or even next to Steph Curry. Like, obviously they wouldn't start next to each other simply because of their similarities, but I don't know, man. I think Dame could have a career resurgence as a sixth man over in Golden State, and I personally would love that. However, I just don't really know what team would be willing to sign him. Like I said, he's not really going to play this season, so you're going to have to take that into account. The Pistons, I wouldn't mind it if they signed him for the right price, but I feel like for what we would pay him, he's probably going to get more from somebody else. And I just am not, I don't love the idea of signing a guy and he might play this year. It just seems a little, off. However, this was the biggest wave and stretch of NBA history. So, Pistons fans, we can all say kumbaya and be happy with the fact that Josh Smith is no longer the poster boy for this kind of situation. So, and I said it on Twitter, and actually Milwaukee fans kind of didn't like it, but I'm like, Milwaukee fans, you're going to be talking about this for a decade. Like, 5 years from now, you're still going to be paying Dame Lillard $22 million a year. That is a starter level player in today's NBA. Just saying, it's going to be hard to build around Giannis when you literally don't even have the money, the assets, the talent, anything. I think Giannis is going to get moved. We will see what happens there. If I'm him, I don't see why you would stay. I mean, they signed Miles Turner. Great. Who's going to play point guard? Kevin Porter Jr.? Good luck. I mean, if that's what you're doing, you might not even make the playoffs, okay, let alone win a playoff series. Now, the real big news of this entire free agency period is LeBron James. And I don't want to spend too much time on just LeBron, but it's hard to not talk about it when the face of the NBA essentially requested a trade. Okay. I know a lot of people are looking at this and going, no, he's just putting pressure on the Lakers. I don't know about that one, folks. If you're LeBron, do you really come out and say that you're willing to play with a different team unless you're actually like wanting to do that? Because think about it, the Lakers just their roster, I know they just signed DeAndre Ayton, which, we'll get to in a second, but their roster is just not that good. I mean, they have Luka, of course, who's a great player, top 5 player in the NBA. They have LeBron, who is great, but he's old. And then they just signed DeAndre Ayton, who, yes, he is a pretty good starting center. I like DeAndre Ayton. However, they still need help. They lost Dorian Finney-Smith. They still need more, scoring from the guard position in general. Because outside of Luka, they really don't have a lot. I know Austin Reeves is there, but he's very, up and down. You can't really count on him, and he's going to have to get re-signed pretty soon. So a lot of moving parts in LA, and I think LeBron might be one of them. Now, James, you might want to chime in on this one because this would be fucking insane if it happened. But the Mavericks are currently the betting favorites to trade for LeBron James. Now, call me crazy, but they could actually get it done without trading Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, or Cooper Flag. Now, they would have to give up Najee Marshall, PJ Washington, and Klay Thompson to match salary and probably one more guy and some picks. But, I mean, if I'm the Mavericks, I might do that, man. Because think about it. Your starting lineup would be, well, first week you don't have Kyrie, so it would be D'Lo, um, um, who would, I don't know, probably, what's his name? Max Christie would probably be their shooting guard. Small forward would be LeBron, and then, or no, small forward would probably be Flag. Power forward LeBron, center Anthony Davis. Good luck. I don't know. That's a pretty fucking stacked team, and they're already pretty stacked now. So, what are your thoughts on not just LeBron to the Mavericks, but LeBron in general?
LeBron in general, I hate him, but he's so cocky, and he
The
for a
goat.
guy that's. I'm not denying that just because of his resume is beyond impressive, obviously. I just never seen a guy who's 6'8", 250, whatever he is, just flop so hard. Um, but unfortunately, that's a handful of people, so it's not per se even unique to him. But it reminds me of what you said in a prior podcast about it's awfully interesting how the Lakers get sold. Dallas just happened to get the first pick after trading away their superstar, and now all of a sudden they might get LeBron too. It, I know I'm not in the know with a lot of basketball stuff, but that does make you scratch the back of your head a little bit. At least it does for me.
Yeah, for sure. And my main thing with it is like, there's got to be another team that LeBron would be open to going to that would also trade for him. And if the Mavericks end up getting him, it would just seem like it seemed like 2K. It'd be like the Mavericks were playing 2K. And I also hate it because Nico Harrison got fucking lucky. Let's not forget that fact, guys. He traded Luca for AD, who then got injured immediately and got super lucky and got the first overall pick. If he then goes and trades for LeBron James, we will never hear the end of it. They will be talking about Nico Harrison was above the or ahead of the curve. He knew more than everybody else when it was really just luck, okay? And I'm going to leave it at that because at the end of the day, there's so much speculation around the LeBron issue that I personally believe he does stay in LA, but it will be with the the notion that LA has a better roster than they do right now as we're speaking. If next week LA is still sitting in the same boat, even after getting Aiton, if they're sitting in the same boat with the same roster, I am not sure LeBron would stay. Now, with that being said, let's just kind of run through the top few free agents that are left in the NBA right now. Um, Obviously, we're not going to spend too much time on this because this really doesn't pertain to the Pistons at all. But number one is Josh Giddey. Obviously, seems like he's probably going to return to the Bulls, but there are some other teams interested. I could see the Nets maybe being one of his potential suitors because they have a lot of money and they probably have the most needs in the NBA. So I could see them going after Josh Giddey. He will probably get like $30 million a year, but there is a small chance that he plays on his qualifying offer so that he can be a unrestricted free agent next year. And then Quentin Grimes is in a similar boat. Sounds like the Wizards could be a potential suitor for the same reason as the Nets for Giddey. Same thing. He will probably get 20 to 30 million somewhere in there per year, but there is a chance he plays on his qualifying offer to become a unrestricted free agent next season and get even more money. Then Jonathan Kuminga is a really, really intriguing player. I don't love him personally, but a lot of the NBA teams do. And I feel like he's just 22 years old, so there's going to be a lot of teams who are going to overpay for him. I could see him similar to Giddey getting that 30 million, between 20 and 30 million dollars. The Miami Heat are a team that have been linked to him quite a bit, so I could see that. There's also potential of a sign and trade with Andrew Wiggins, which he's also been linked to the Lakers, so we can keep an eye on that. Could be a three-team deal type situation. I would be surprised if that happens though. And then Chris Paul, of course, 40 years old, so he's definitely not in his prime. I do think, yeah, right. It's crazy, dude.
I
I do
remember
think
him being
that,
drafted.
yeah, I feel you. That's like now every player who gets drafted in every sport is younger than me, and I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like I can say this kid is really good, and actually he's a kid to me. Like it's kind of nuts. Um, but with that being said, Chris Paul is probably going to go to LA, either the Clippers or the Lakers. I would be surprised if it's not the Clippers though, because a return there just makes a lot of sense. Kawhi's there, James Harden's there, and he would offer some really good things off the bench for them. But I do like him in LA for the with the Lakers as well. And then we also have Al Horford, who is likely going to go to the Warriors. And then Cam Thomas, who I mentioned before with Brooklyn, in a similar situation as Giddey, probably going to play on a little bit. He's probably going to get a little bit less than what we assumed, probably like 22 to 25 million a year. But there is a chance that's not with the Brooklyn Nets, so keep an eye on that. And then last but not least, and this will be a perfect segue into wrapping up our NBA portion. Russell Westbrook, okay, is still a free agent, and I personally would love him in Detroit as our Dennis Schroeder replacement, okay? So Westbrook has a handful of teams that were interested, the Sacramento Kings, the New York Knicks, but it seems like they both have pivoted away from Westbrook since. So he's kind of it's up in the air to who is really interested in him right now. But like I said, I would love him in Detroit as a Dennis Schroeder replacement. Why? Because, oh, looks like we lost James. Well, we will just keep it pushing here. Well, the reason I think Westbrook would be a great fit for Detroit is because he brings that fire, that passion, but he also is just an attacker. Like, obviously, he's not going to be a great three-point shooter. He's not going to be, your guy that you go to down the stretch, but off the bench as our backup point guard, I think he would be great. He brings that tenacity. He's a defensive guy. He rebounds the ball. He does a little bit of everything, and he plays with hustle. And I think he's the perfect vet for this Pistons team. So, and James is back. Beautiful. So, all good. So, with that being said, that's kind of why I think Westbrook would be a great fit for Detroit, especially to kind of replace Dennis Schroeder, because now going into our Pistons segment, they just signed Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert, and I think Duncan Robinson is a fucking 1-to-1 replacement of Tim Hardaway Jr. And it's so insane to me because it's so similar. Their stats are so similar. They're almost exactly the same. They both averaged 11 points per game, and they both had, let me see here, just to make sure before I just say this. Duncan had 11 points per game, 2.3 rebounds per game, and 2.4 assists per game, whereas Tim Hardaway Jr. had 11 points per game. Let's see here. He had 11 points per game, 2.4 rebounds, and 1.6 assists. Almost identical. Okay, the biggest difference, in my opinion, is their shooting percentages, because Tim Hardaway Jr., he shot 40% from the field and 37% or 36.8% from three, 40.6% from the field. He also played 28 minutes per game, whereas Duncan Robinson had very similar stats and 24 minutes per game, shot 43.7% from the field and 39.3% from three. So I would say that's even a little bit of an upgrade, because if you compare Their per 36 stats, Duncan Robinson is a little bit better. And I do think that it's a good omen for what I think Duncan Robinson's going to do in Detroit. I am writing an article currently on this. It should be out probably tomorrow. I try to do a deep dive into both of the guys that we just signed. So I like Duncan Robinson because he is a knockdown shooter. He's gonna be a perfect off-ball guy for Cade because not only does he does really well at getting off screens, getting to the three-point line and hitting a shot, but he also does really well at backdoor cutting and just cutting in general, moving without the ball, setting screens to then hit a three or setting screens to then roll. He's not a big man by any means, but he can kind of do those situations. So I like his fit a little bit better than Tim Hardaway Jr. In Detroit. The only real negative difference is that Duncan Robinson is not a great defender. Okay, and I know Tim Hardaway Jr. is not a great defender as well, but I think Tim Hardaway showed in the playoffs last year that he can do it in spurts, right? Like he was picking up guys full court against the Knicks. He was doing pretty well defensively all around in that series. Now, Duncan Robinson is not a guy that I want picking people up full court at all whatsoever. Duncan Robinson is one of those guys that he's going to basically be an offensive guy, maybe a bit of a defensive liability. But with that said, I like the signing at 3 years, 48 million, so 16 million per year. And we also got him in a sign and trade where we traded Simone Fontecchio, who was due 8.3 million. So if you think about it that way, we're really only paying Duncan Robinson, $7 million more per year than what we would have paid Fontecchio. So not a bad deal. Not a bad deal at all. And then Karis LeVert, of course, we also signed him. He is, I think, the Malik Beasley replacement. I know a lot of people, for some reason, they're in this mindset that Karis LeVert is our Schroeder replacement and Robinson is our Beasley replacement. No. Okay, no. Because Karis LeVert is a solid playmaker, but he is not a backup point guard. He is not a point guard. He is a decent playmaking two. Like, he averaged last year, it's split between two teams. Okay, that's very weird. Let's look at it this way. He averaged 12.1 points last year, 3.2 rebounds, and 3.4 assists while shooting 46.7% from the field, 37.3% from three. Okay. Malik Beasley, on the other hand, had a little bit more, scoring, but he didn't shoot as well outside of, except for the 3-point line, because he did shoot a little bit better from three. And Beasley averaged 16.3 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 1.7 assists while shooting 43% from the field and 41.6% from three. So Karis LeVert is not a one-to-one replacement the same way that Duncan Robinson is for Tim Hardaway Jr. He's a replacement in terms of style of play, but I do think things are going to be a little different, okay? Karis LeVert is better at finding his teammates. He's a little bit better defensively. He's a little bit better with the ball on the floor. Like he's a little bit better dribbler and finisher off the drive. Malik Beasley is clearly a better three-point shooter, but I would say that's probably all he really has over Karis. And we signed Karis to a very team-friendly deal, $14.5 million over 2 seasons. So I really like that signing as well. And I just feel like these two signings are getting some love and some hate, which I feel like they're very middle tier signings. But I do think we got a little bit better overall. Now, to wrap it up, the Pistons still have some needs, though. Okay, the Pistons, they still need a backup four and a backup point guard. There are a decent amount of options available for that. Okay, we have Bol, Precious Achua, Chris Boucher, Trey Lyles. All could be solid backup fours. I think Bol would work the best. And then Precious Achua, I really like too. I mean, some of you guys remember in our last regular season game against the Knicks, Precious Achua kind of went off. I'm pretty sure he had over 20 points and over 10 rebounds. So he can do it. And as a backup, I would really like him in Detroit. The other two guys, Boucher and Lyles, are going to be a little bit older, but they're going to be a little bit cheaper. So we'll kind of have to take that into account. We never know how much money we're going to really have until we see exactly how these contracts are structured. Because we could have an 8.8 exception or a $5.3 million exception, depending on what we do there. And then to wrap it up, our Dennis Schroeder replacement could be a handful of guys. I know I mentioned Russell Westbrook. I think he'd be great for it. But outside of him, Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Paul, Alec Burks, and Cam Payne, I think all make a lot of sense as well. Obviously, Chris Paul, probably not likely. He's probably going to LA. And then I would say Malcolm Brogdon is probably my second on that list, but it's unlikely due to money and also I would say he probably wants to go to a team that's a little bit more of a contender. And then Alec Burks and Cam Payne are the last two, on that list. I really like them both. I think we all saw Cam Payne last year in the playoffs. He can get it done. I mean, he came off the bench for the Knicks and brought something with him. So I really like that idea, and I think he could be had for pretty close to the minimum. So those are a couple guys that the Pistons should have their eyes on as time goes on throughout this free agency. Obviously, there's a lot of time to go still when it comes to the NBA. So we will keep tabs on that, and we'll keep you guys updated as always on Twitter and on the show every week. So with that being said, we'll now move on to our Tigers segment, which will probably be a little bit shorter since it's not, the middle of everything for them like it is with the NBA. So with that being said, James, the floor is yours.
Almost forgot to unmute my mic there. All right. Yeah, I'm going to keep the Tiger segment short and sweet because my Red Wing section is loaded with, as I mentioned, all the stuff that we've talked about. But the Tigers are in the middle of a doubleheader. In fact, Game 2 should be starting right around now. They won this afternoon's game that started at 1 o'clock, 11-2, throttling Washington in our nation's capital. Riley Green is someone I'm going to have to expand on at a later point because, once again, I'm trying to keep this short. But he had 2 home runs and 6 RBIs in the first game. Torque had a home run solo shot, and Jake Rogers, who's batting under 200, had his very first home run of the season, which happened to also bring in 3. And it was 6-0 Tigers in the first inning today. So we kind of got out early and just coasted the rest of the game. Um, Looking forward to game 2, like I said. And then the only other thing I really wanted to touch on in terms of Tigers, because like you said, they're just kind of in the middle of the season, just doing their thing, is Skubal's last start I wanted to touch on just because it's Skubal. His last start was yet another 7 inning gem. He only allowed 1 hit while giving up 13 strikeouts, or I'm not sure to say giving up, getting 13 strikeouts to only 1 walk against the division rivals and the Twins on Sunday. Once again, he's masterful. Once again, he's the best in the business. Once again, Illich, please sign him. And I mean, the dude just every single time he's on the mound, his bad days are some other pitcher's best days. Like it's enough said. Just get it done. And to not bog down anything else, I'm ready to kick it off with the Wings next, just because, like I said, Tigers have a game either right now or about 10-ish minutes, depending on any potential delays, which they've been having a lot of lately. So.
Yeah, I have PTSD anytime I hear about a Tigers game being delayed. So, with that being said, though, we will do our NFL segment next because that one should be a little bit shorter from the NHL as well. I know we got a lot to talk about when it comes to the Red Wings. So, really not too much going on in the NFL right now. The Lions, not a lot is happening. I mean, the only thing I can really tell you is training camp starts July 26th, and tickets are available July 15th at 10 a.m. However, don't fucking take them all because I want some. So y'all need to chill out a little bit, all right, and let me just get a couple. I just want to go to the last two with where they joint practices. That's all I care about. Okay. With that being said, though, the only other thing really in the NFL that has happened recently is the Jalen Ramsey trade, which I'm sure we can talk about a little bit. But Jalen Ramsey was traded to Pittsburgh for let me break the whole trade down. Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and a 7th-round pick went to the Steelers, and Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 5th-round pick went to Miami. So Minkah Fitzpatrick is a Miami Dolphin again. Which, look, man, I think this is a bad trade for the Steelers. Okay, I don't really get it. Like, I think we've mentioned on this show multitude of times, Jalen Ramsey is not who he used to be. He's not bad by any means, but they now have two, for lack of a better term, washed up corners as their starters. Like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay are beyond their prime. Okay, they are not who they used to be in any way, shape, or form. I do think Jalen Ramsey is a bit better than Slay is right now. Also, we talked about it on this show that at least I did. I think Ramsey would be better as a slot in today's NFL with his uh, talent level, and it kind of seems like the Steelers agree because think about it, they basically just traded their slot defensive back with it, which was Minka Fitzpatrick, for Jalen Ramsey, and I don't know. I think they look at Jalen Ramsey as an outside inside guy, and Minka was just more of like an inside guy. And also, from what I've been hearing from Steelers fans, he didn't play that great last year, so it wasn't like it was a surprise to everybody. But Steelers fans weren't really that baffled that that's what they gave up. The Jonnu Smith edition, I don't really get it. I mean, they have two good tight ends already. The only thing I could see is if they use him in like that Joker kind of spot, like the Broncos are going to use Evan Ingram. It's kind of like an H back, slot receiver, tight end type, which that makes a lot of sense. But you're also paying Jalen Ramsey like almost $30 million a year. Okay, that's fucking nuts. Like the fact that they made this trade and are paying him that much is insane. Okay. Now, I like it for Miami a lot because Jalen Ramsey is not where he used to be. They get off of his contract. I do think they got a little bit worse because Minka, first of all, if they would have just re signed Javon Holland, they wouldn't have this problem right now anyway. But signing Minka or, trading for Minka doesn't really move the needle for me for them. And I don't think they're going to have that great of a season. Now, on the other side, Darren Waller was traded to Miami for a sixth-round pick to replace Jonnu Smith, which it's like, what? The dude's been retired. Like, what are we doing here, man? I just don't get it. And I don't know if you heard this, James, but the reason he retired is because they asked him to block. Now, if that ain't the most Miami Dolphins shit you ever heard in your fucking life, this guy like 2 weeks ago or whatever was like, yeah, I retired because they wanted me to block people, and they're like, oh, we want you now. That we want you on our team. It's like, what the fuck are we doing, man? Like, I get it. He could still be a pretty good receiver, but trading a six-round pick for a guy who hasn't touched a football field in over a season and I don't think was planning on coming back, it's a little wild. But with that being said, what are your thoughts on this big trade?
Um, I was beyond baffled when I first saw it because I am obviously not a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But last I checked, Mika Fitzpatrick is a top five safety linebacker slot, kind of a do-it-all player, kind of like our version of Brian Branch. And I know you just said he had a down year. That is news to me. It's not like I said, it's not like I watch Pittsburgh. But even if he had a down year, I know for the more recent history, in terms of a larger sample size, he's still damn good. And as you mentioned, Jalen Ramsey is kind of washed. Now, he's not terrible, but he's not Jalen Ramsey. He's not that name or as good as that name sounds when you look at it and see it on a depth chart, much like Slay. But Pittsburgh seems to be, I don't know if loading up is the right term, but acquiring a lot of older talent between Slay, Jalen Ramsey, and Aaron Rodgers all just this offseason. So I don't quite know what their plan is, but to be honest, I'm just kind of glad we're not in their scenario. That's their problem, not mine, or ours, or whatever. So I was gonna say hope it works out, but unless you're a Lion, I don't care. So I know they're AFC, so at least, well, you know what? In the AFC, I want Aaron Glenn to do well. So no, I don't really care what the Steelers do. Um, Not gonna be rooting for Ben Johnson, but Aaron Glenn went to AFC, so I'll wish him the best over there till the Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
And then and then in terms of Waller coming back out of retirement, as you mentioned, I kind of feel like he made a fool of himself because I did see the comments where he said, they wanted me to block more and kind of use more in that H-back role, and he's pretty much like, never mind, bye. Who hears those comments and says, that's the guy I want? It's literally the opposite of anything we hear about in Detroit. So, once again, it's Miami's problem. So whatever, enjoy him, I guess.
Yeah, and mind you, he also was retiring to become a rapper. So
Yeah, I
just
saw that.
that as well. It's like, all right, man, sure. You obviously are just fucking bored. But with that being said, Minka Fitzpatrick last year had a 68.4 PFF grade, whereas Jalen Ramsey had a 76.9. Now, obviously, we take PFF with a grain of salt. That's not really a big difference. I mean, personally, it's like, yeah, Jalen was a little bit better in their eyes, but like, I don't know. I just don't see why Pittsburgh would be so apt to give up on Minka because, like you said, I mean, 2 years ago he was like the best safety in football. Like
Yeah,
everybody was talking about it. I don't know if he led the league in interceptions or not, but he was definitely up there.
yeah,
Because
he
I
was up
remember
there.
it seemed like every other week the dude was getting a pick, and he was just everywhere. Giving up on him after one season, I don't know. I did hear some, inklings that he might have had some like culture issues or locker room issues, which could obviously go into that. But so the fuck does Jalen Ramsey, dude? It's Jalen Ramsey. Like, what are we talking about right now? And like you said with Aaron Rodgers, it definitely seems like the Steelers are stuck in like 2018. I don't know. It just is like they're like Darren or not Darren Waller. They're like Aaron Rodgers, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey. Let's go win a Super Bowl. And it's like you guys are fucking like 8 years too late, bro. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know. But with that being said, that's really all we have for our NFL/Lions segment. So hopefully this starts heating up a little bit, and maybe the Lions make a move. That would be beautiful. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but Azarius Smith would be really cool. But yeah, doesn't seem like it's going to happen right now, but we'll see. I mean, a lot of these players, something I was thinking about, some of these players don't want to sign until training camp's over, just simply because they're veterans and they don't want to have to be there. So I could see that being the case where they just kind of wait and wait and wait, and then he comes because he was here last year. So I mean, it's not like he has a shit ton to learn. So give him a couple weeks of practice, and we should be all right.
Well, if Aaron Rodgers can get in trouble for missing, excuse me, Steelers camp before he signs, can Zadarius Smith get in trouble for missing the Lions mini camp before it happens or before he signs?
And I just want to thank Joy Taylor for that because I'm still like that was some of the wildest shit I've ever seen, and the fact that no one corrected her, everybody was just like, yeah, totally, fuck Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, I'm not against that either. So,
Right, but it's like at least have your facts straight, guys. Come on, like we can't like that. Like I couldn't imagine how dumb I would feel if I said some shit like that, and we're not in front of millions of people like that. Well, realistically, hundreds of thousands like they are because they don't get millions anymore. But I don't know. It just seems like that one got swept under the rug. But with that being said, fingers crossed the Lions can make some moves. And with that, we will move on to our final segment, our Red Wings segment. But before we do, okay, the Red Wings have made a lot of signings. Okay, they brought back Patrick Kane. Okay, they I don't know. There's this guy who's really good. There's a couple of them who's really good, like Alex DeBrinket. Okay, that you could go buy their jersey. If you really like them, go get a jersey. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you, brother. This is how it goes. But if you want anything, any team, any apparel, check out fanatics.com. The link will be in the description. We would really appreciate if you used our link because I'll tell you right now, Fanatics has the best stuff out there for the best price. So check it out. Do what you got to do. I mean, dude, I got 4 Lions shirts on Fanatics for $40. Nike Lions shirts for $40. You can't get one of those for $40 anywhere else. I'm just saying. So link is in the description. Check that out. And also trytheworld.com. You guys should really check it out. You'd enjoy it a lot. Essentially, You pick a country, they send you some snacks, you try it. If you like it, you could try the same one again, or you could try a different country. It's up to you, but it's a really cool way to kind of travel the world without actually having to leave your couch. So, with that being said, we will now move on to our Red Wings segment, and James, the floor is yours.
Well, I was gonna open with the wing sign Patrick Kane, but no, I'm just playing with you. Um, oh man, what a whirlwind between my own 2 cents on on some of the signings and some of the draft picks, which of course I'm gonna go over here in a moment, to other. I'm not recreating the wheel here, but as anyone who is involved in any kind of sports social media knows, each pick, each signing has completely different reviews from every source. I've seen certain Red Wing podcasts say this new free agent, new draft pick is going to thrive, and other players or other podcast people, etc., saying what the fuck are we doing? Why did we get this guy? It's all over the place. There's no consensus. Everything is chaos. With that being said, here's my 2 cents. Obviously, I'll start with Kane since it got brought up. A plus, like it's Patrick Kane. He played, I believe, without looking up. I'm pretty sure it was 72 games he played last season, which is the most he played in a couple years. He's been battling injuries. He's seemingly healthier than in years. He likes it here. He knows our system. Coaches, yada yada. No brainer to keep him. I'm glad we actually got it done. And then I'll stick with free agents before I talk about draft. We added a lot of players that aren't going to make a difference. And take that for what you will. I, who normally am extremely anti-Iserman, as anyone who follows me on Twitter or doesn't follow me on Twitter and is one of the people yelling at me on Twitter, either way, pretty much exclusively people know me as the Iserman hater, can't actually hate too much on this offseason for him. With what he has, with the team he has, with the cap he has, and with the free agents that were available this offseason, he did the most he could. I'll give him that credit. The star players that I wanted to bring in, like Mitch Marner, never even looked at us. Yzerman probably could have called him 15 times. He would have just said no, declined the call. Nothing we could have done got him. He went to the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who are a cup contender. They gave him top dollar, so he went to a contender and got top dollar. We can't compete with that. So as much as I want to say, well, why can't we? Like, we should be better than this, blah, blah, blah. He's not coming here. So I would have loved it. That would have been like a Madden franchise mode kind of move, but that's not happening, and it didn't happen. A lot of the people he signed, and I'm not going to go into each signing because he did sign 4 or 5 guys. Four of them were 1-year deals. So even if these guys come in and aren't producing, they aren't going to stay here a while. And if they do, then we can always re-up them next year, blah, blah, blah. And 3 of the 4 1-year deals were under $1 million per year, or I guess per year, of course, because it's 1 year. But 3 of the 4 1-year contracts were like $750,000. And I know hockey money's not quite like basketball money if anyone's seen the SGA extension. But Jesus. But yeah, so it's like 1 year, $750K. Like, these players aren't good that we signed, but we signed them to cheap 1 year, zero cost, zero risk. If they come in here and maybe they learn, because some of them were younger. It's a mix of some veterans, which I will get into here, but some of them are younger guys who kind of need their first chance. Maybe they can click, and maybe we find a diamond in the rough. But even if we don't, worst case scenario, let's say these guys come in here and they're terrible. we just don't re-sign them. They're not taking up a huge amount of cap space. The Wings, after all of these signings, still have 14 million in cap space. Like, we can go out there and afford one of the best players in the league in terms of money. So, like, our hands aren't tied, but the best free agents are off the board. There have been some rumors linking the Wings to a couple trade targets, which I might kick that can down the road just because with the free agents we did sign, plus the draft, I have enough to talk about today, and I don't want to keep everyone here all night. But we signed a lot of cheap, like I said, a lot of cheap talent. One name that should ring a bell to anyone in the NHL circle, so to speak, is James Van Riemsdyk. The dude's been around since I might have been in elementary school. I think I'm pretty sure he's older than Patrick Kane. Um, but he was a 1 year, $1 million deal. So his numbers are decreasing. He is very much kind of like the Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay, and they're not what they used to be. But once again, it was 1 year, 1 million. I can't bitch about it. Like as much as I would love to come on here and slam Yzerman like I have pretty much every time I've talked about the Wings, how can you complain about a 1 year, $1 million deal? If he sucks, he's gone next year, whatever. And if he's good, we can keep him, roll him over, or we have cheap labor. It's not a big deal. I can't be mad at that. Which brings me to one of the things I wanted to address in terms of the going back to what I started with, the duality of man, so to speak. Um, as everyone knows, I am, and I've said multiple times today, an Yzerman hater, but I found it interesting when I was saying pretty much what I just told you guys and defending some of these moves because, like I said, even though they're not names, there's no cost, if any, low cost if you want to be nitpicky. But I've had some, I will just say, aggressive Yzerman haters call me an Yzerman slappy for defending some of these moves. And I literally had to tag one of my biggest haters because he loves Yzerman, and I'm not going to give him a free shout out. But I'm like, some people call me the biggest Yzerman hater out there, and yet some other Yzerman haters are calling me an Yzerman slappy. So I am too hard on Yzerman for the fans, and I'm too lenient on Yzerman for the haters. So here I am.
Yeah, really not much you can do about that one, it's like, well, my opinion's my opinion and I guess you don't fucking like it. Like and that's just
Yeah,
how it goes.
absolutely. And like I said, I'm like, there's moves where you can defend, which I will get into the biggest move of the offseason here right after this. I don't want quite to rant speech, but it's just like you're allowed to not like someone or not like their body of work, but appreciate a move or two they made. Like, just because he made one or two bad moves in the past, or several, doesn't mean he's incapable of making a good move. That being said, I'm going to segue that into trading for Josh Gibson, because even though our free agent market was barren, other than keeping our own guys like Kane and Soderblom, the only guy of note that can actually make a notable contribution to the team this upcoming season is Josh Gibson, who we traded or got in a trade from Anaheim. And not only is Josh Gibson the best goalie that was on Anaheim, they're rebuilding. We took a moderate contract, but once again, we still have cap space. And we got rid of Peter Mrazek, who, if you've been watching this podcast, you know I'm not a fan of. So we got rid of, in my opinion, a bad player, a bad contract, and received in most people's opinion, the best goalie in our farm system / team. He is dealing with a little bit of an injury history, Gibson is. However, he is going to be doing the two-man system with Cam Talbot, so we can keep him fresh. And we actually went from probably the worst goalie situation in the NHL to an average to above average. Like, I'm not going to say we're great. I'm not going to say we're top five, but I will say we are no longer embarrassing at the goalie position. And Gibson's been there, done that. He's been in the league multiple years. And he's been a thorn in my side because I remember we almost traded for him at the trade deadline last year, but they wanted a prospect and a first. And then this offseason, when they got the other offers, they realized they're not going to get what they wanted to get for him. They took Mrazek, a second, and a fourth. And losing a second-round pick to get your best goalie, I'm not mad at. Getting rid of Mrazek, I think, is a plus. And the fourth-round pick, I don't really care about because later on in the draft, which I will get to the draft after this, we traded down in the third round from the third round to the fourth round and picking up a fourth rounder next year. So in one trade, we got rid of our future fourth rounder, and in a different trade, we gained a different team's fourth rounder. So it's kind of offsetting a little bit. So we traded a bad goalie and a second round pick for, although a little bit of an injury history, the best goalie we have. So I'm all for that. Pat Verbeek, former assistant GM to Steve Yzerman, is the general manager of Anaheim. So thank you for still helping us out. They'll kind of be like the equivalent of Brett Holmes making a trade with the Rams. But
Which we've done handfuls of times.
Which we've done. So I appreciate it. They get better for the future. They get the picks. We get better now, which is pretty much the only move Yzerman's made this offseason to make us here and now. Like I said, his hands were kind of tied with this offseason, so I can't fault him for that one. Potentially, unfortunately.
See, and honestly, like, not to interrupt your role here, but I've seen a lot of people on Twitter kind of, like you said before, there's a lot of people that are just fucking hating on everything. And then there's a lot of people, like, I would say like us, that weren't really that positive on Yzerman this season and how he's been doing things. But both of us can kind of look at it and go, he's doing something to make the team better. And it's kind of what we've asked for. And, obviously we're not getting, like you mentioned, the top tier prospects or, top tier free agents or anything like that. But we're building a little bit better team than we were last year. And now if we could just go get one of those, like, not top tier free agents necessarily, but a starter, like high level starter type of guy, especially defensively, then I think all of our Red Wings fans would kind of shut up for a little while. You know what I mean? They'd be like, oh, okay, we might be better than we were last year. So it's kind of funny to see, though, the difference in opinion on these moves.
Absolutely, and even not just even the fans, like I mentioned before. I've seen different podcasts and different beat writers and reporters between the Athletic or the Free Press, or all kind of say like, this free agent's mid, or this one's great, and they're all talking about the same player. So it's just a total. I don't quite want to say a guessing game because we don't know how these players are going to play with the Red Wings talent around them under their new coach. Giving this coach a whole season should be encouraging because we did play better after we switched coaches. Unfortunately, we were just in too big of a hole. We did kind of falter later in the year, but unfortunately, like many Detroit teams, we've dealt with plenty of injuries. I mean, once again, I know every team deals with injuries, but it seems to hit Detroit a little harder for some reason. And but there is, I would say, optimism, or at least cause for optimism. I'm not going to sit here and say we are set up to make the playoffs this upcoming season, but I can't say, like, no, we don't have a chance. Like, it's truly 50-50. And we retained what we could. We retained Kane. Like I said, we got better with the goalie situation. I do wish we added a defenseman. However, like I said, Yzerman's hands were kind of tied. We were linked to talking in deep conversations with the New York Rangers on one of their top, well, not top, but one of their better defensemen in Miller. But he got traded for a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a prospect. And for the talent level that Miller is, because he would be an improvement on what we have, he wouldn't be a big enough improvement to sacrifice a first and second during this kind of rebuild-esque process. So as much as I want Yzerman to go and do something for the now, besides Gibson, the cost isn't right. That it would make no sense. It would remind me kind of like a Charlie V. Ben Gordon situation. Like you're so desperate to try to win now that you tied your hands and you kind of pushed your rebuild back. So on one hand, I wanted Yzerman to be aggressive, but the way the things played out and the way like the draft board fell, and like I can at least understand where he's coming from. So I'll at least give him his props. So we didn't further any bad contracts. He seemingly learned from his past mistakes, at least in my opinion. So like I said, we're not as set up as I wanted us to be at this point. But unless we threw top dollar at average free agents, we wouldn't be getting anybody. And if we did that, then 2 or 3 years from now, we would want to be attaching a pick to trade away the contract or looking at buyouts or. So at least he didn't continue going down that road. So like I said, I kind of applaud him a little bit for that, but at the same time, it is a lackluster offseason at the same time.
So, with that being said, before you move on, what are your thoughts right now on where we're at with the Robertson trade? Because I know we've talked about this a handful of times on the show, but do you think that's still a possibility? Are you hearing any like new rumors on that by chance, or are there any other teams involved that you've heard?
Unfortunately, on the Robertson front, yes, I have heard quite a bit of an update that he's pretty much off the trade market.
Oh.
They let go Michael Grunland, who was a second, third line forward for them, and he just signed a new 3-year, $7 million per year contract with the Anaheim Ducks, who we just gave them a little bit of cap relief by taking Gibson from them. But as I was saying leading up to the draft and free agency, if I was Dallas, I would not let Robertson go. I would get rid of other people so you can afford them, and that seems to be the case.
Gotcha.
Right now, they have not given him a new contract, / they have not agreed to terms on a new contract, but they did just get rid of a player that should free up enough money in cap space that they can get something done, a week or so from now or whenever. So I am hoping we still can, because like I said, we have the cap space to add a top talent like that. But rightfully so, the Dallas Stars seemingly have done what it takes to keep him. But
Gotcha.
For now, it's not set in stone, so maybe there's a chance. But I'd say 1% as opposed to prior maybe 2025.
So with that being said, that's unfortunate, but is there anyone else that you can think of off the top of your head that, whether it be free agent or trade scenario, that the Red Wings might be able to get at this point in the offseason?
Not necessarily, to be honest. What we need in terms of defense and a top 6 forward is just not on the market, not available. So as I was mentioning, kind of, or touching on before, I feel like Yzerman tried. Like I said, we talked to the Rangers about defenseman Miller, and we seemingly, by reports, reached out to like Marner and stuff like that, but they got to get back to us, and we're not overpaying. So he tried to fill those spots, but the cost was either too much, or they did not feel the same way about us as we did them.
Gotcha. And so my last question, which is kind of a second part of that question, is: do you think this is pretty much the roster we're going to go into the season with? Like, not much is going to change from here?
For the most part, yes. I will say the signing we made earlier this afternoon of, let me get his name here, Mason. I have it written down somewhere. Appleton, there it is. We signed Mason Appleton from the Winnipeg Jets for a 2-year, $3 million average per year. And that is a head-scratching signing to me just because he has a very similar skill set to what we already have on the team. And he's a veteran presence in the bottom two lines. And we're kind of logjam there. So to me, between our cap space left and us signing a slightly cheaper version of what we already have, it feels like there might be a trade about to happen. But I have not heard any rumors, seen any links of who that might be. And if it doesn't come down, this is even more head scratching. But I feel like we signed pretty much JT Compher light for half the years, half the price, and for now we have both of them. So it's just kind of a weird fit, almost like signing a high tier backup quarterback. If you're like Cleveland or something, you don't have that bona fide starter, but you go get like a Joe Flacco, where it's like he might not, like what? So I don't know if there's a move about to happen. I would be kind of bummed out if we enter the season with 14 million of unused cap. That is a large number. I mean, going back to Mitch Marner, he signed for 12 million per season. And I mean, we have 14 unused. So I am hoping that we do something, and something might be on the horizon. But I will say Yzerman is notoriously tight-lipped on trades, and you normally don't hear about anything until it's already happened. He doesn't often let rumors sneak out there. So I'm hoping something happens, but for the vast majority, I will say this is probably 95% of the roster that we're going into the season with.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I mean, like you said, there's really not, much on the market, and unless there's a trade, it's going to be hard for us to really, get much better.
Yeah, it would have to be a trade at this point, in my opinion, for us to get better for this upcoming season. There's still free agents out there. It's not like every player is signed, of course, but no difference maker. So no one that I'm just like, oh come on, this guy's still out there, go get him, man. Like no Nick Chubbs or anyone like that, or. So, I mean, like I said, as much as I wanted us to improve here and now, I get it. If they're not there, they're not there.
Gotcha. So, with that being said, I assume the draft is up next?
Yes, sir. And the draft is something I wanted to have some more fan engagement on, because I personally was over the moon excited when we were on the clock, because my number one most realistic prediction player was there for us. Obviously the top 10 guys aren't going to be there, but the most realistic guy I thought could fall to us was there, and we did not take him. So I was slightly bummed out, but I can't be too mad, because who we did take was a young man by the name of Carter Bear. He was number 2 on my list of best available. So I can't be too mad. I did have Victor Eklund above him personally. But if I had like my Mel Kiper big board, we drafted the guy I had number 2. So once again, I can't be mad at Yzerman. I can't shake my fist at him and be like, why? I get it. The kid's talented. The only part that may set me back, and I haven't heard anyone talk about, but Carter Bear is coming off of a decently significant injury, in my opinion. He had a partially torn Achilles, which ended his season last year, and I do find it intriguing because especially with talking with NFL, NBA, there's a ton of people tearing their Achilles nowadays. I've never heard of a partially torn Achilles. So that one I'm not as knowledgeable on. But the one thing I will say, obviously sucks, is the kid's only 18. So when you have an 18-year-old that's already got a damaged Achilles, I don't know how well that will heal. Maybe fully. That's just out of. I'm not a doctor, obviously. With all due respect.
So,
Go for it.
looking it up here, it seems like it's not I mean, depending on how severe, obviously the tear is, it seems like he could be good in within, uh, 2 months, could be 6 months, but it does seem like there is potential that it's not that big of a problem.
Okay, maybe that's why I haven't heard of it then. But I'm like, I didn't want to blow it out of proportion, but I don't know how you don't mention a partially torn Achilles. I'm like, you heal better obviously when you're younger, as anyone out there aging knows. But I'm like, he's already 18, and I just hope it doesn't linger. But the kid is supremely talented. He played in 56 games last year, and he had 40 goals and 42 assists for 82 total points in 56 games. That is elite level. Like, that is, I don't want to quite say unheard of level, but that is like number one overall pick type of numbers, at least. He does play with a little bit more physical edge. Not that he's that physical, and I'm only circling for that because our second round pick was pretty much Mr. Physical. So this guy is more than what we have in our forwards now. But he has a nice scoring touch, nice speed. The only thing that sucks is once again with any prospect we would have taken with this pick is the timeline is looking like at least 4 years. So on one hand, I'm excited because I'm like, hey, a 40 goal scorer, that'd be great. I can't wait to watch 2029.
Right.
So it's like, yay! Eventually.
Right.
But but and quickly touching back on past drafts. One thing that seems to be happening is Nate Danielson, our first round pick from I want to say 3 years ago, did receive a camp invite and should be in the Red Wings main roster training camp in preseason. So while we are drafting guys that we won't see for a handful of years, there's a few guys that we drafted a handful of years ago that are ready now. So there is still new shiny young prospects to look at. It's just not these ones that I'm about to talk about. Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty much my wrap up on Carter Bear, our first round pick, and our second round pick. I'm gonna destroy his last name. I apologize in advance. But it is Eddie Glenborg. He is a Swedish player, and we've had a lot of success in Red Wings history with Swedish players. See Lucas Raymond, our top goal scorer. I'm sorry, top point getter. The Brinket American is our best goal scorer. But he had 19 goals and 15 assists in 28 games, so he still had more than a point a game, so he still has that offensive game. But he is essentially a bully on ice, and I mean that in a good way. He's got that NFL trench dirtbag kind of mentality that the Red Wings lack and have been probably lacking for 20 years. Ever since whenever Darren McCarty left. He compared himself and his style of play to Matthew Tkachuk, who, if anyone out there is not familiar with Tkachuk, he was on the Team USA team, one of the assistant captains, and he is one of the main faces. They have, I was going to say unfortunately, but they have a few. That's why they are back-to-back champions. But he's one of the faces of the Florida Panther back-to-back champion. Florida Panthers. So when he compares himself to one of the main cogs in the back-to-back Stanley Cup champion, I can't help but to be intrigued. I can't lie. The NHL draft is not quite like the NFL draft where we can say these are the players, they went to this college, we watched them play either via film or against our favorite teams. He played in Sweden. I'm not watching random Swedish teams. I can't say I scouted this guy. But everything I've seen on him is very positive. Some like him more, potentially more than Bear, just because of his physical style, and kind of would bring that bodyguard aspect to some of our smaller players, because the Red Wings are known around the league as a team you can kind of push around. We have a lot more of a European style in Sweden, Germany, and all those other overseas leagues. They tend to play a lot more kind of like soccer on ice. It's a lot more finesse, a lot more passing, one-timers. It's less checking, less physical. And this guy was kind of known as a punk over there for being extra physical. And like I said, for us here, I love it. So I am all for that. And then to move on to our third round pick, let me see if I can grab this name real quick. It is Michael Pradell. Man, these hockey names, man. But he was a third round pick. The one thing that really stood out to me about him is the fact that he is a goalie. And the NHL is in terms of draft is kind of like the NFL, and goalies are kind of like maybe tight ends or kickers. Like you don't normally take them in the first 2-3 rounds unless they're like an elite prospect. And we already have two elite prospects in Sebastian Cossa and Trey Augustine, who once again, Augustine just won the Big Ten title and the championship in Michigan State this last offseason, or this last season for college hockey. And then we have those guys kind of growing up in the pipeline, and those are our future most likely tandem. But for now, we just traded for Gibson from Anaheim, as I talked about earlier, and we have Cam Talbot, who was our main starter last year. So we have like our future guys, we have our guys for the now, and we took another one. So on one hand, I can't hate on it because not every prospect turns out. Maybe Augustine or Cossa isn't the guy we think they are. But at the same time, we're spending the first and second round pick on forwards, and spending our biggest move in the offseason on a goalie. We spend our third round pick on a goalie. I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit because when are we going to address defense? Like we need a lot of defense, maybe even more than some of the other positions. But as I said a little bit ago, it's not like I have scouted every prospect in the NHL draft. Maybe this guy was just the best one on the board, and there wasn't a defenseman worth taking there. We did draft defensemen later in the fifth and sixth rounds. There are 7 rounds, if anyone doesn't know out there, just like the NFL draft. So we did take a couple flyers on late round defensemen. But I do kind of scratch my head a little bit with taking a goalie when we kind of have a logjam a little bit at goalie. So we'll see what happens with that. But once again, not only do pretty much all of your draft picks take a handful of years unless you're a top 5 pick. For example, the number 1 overall pick is probably going to make the NHL right out of the gate. But goalies tend to take longer than most other prospects. So even if this prospect pans out, it might be 2030, 2031 until we see him. And once again, Cossa and Augustine are draft picks from 3-4 years ago that are already getting to that level. So once again, maybe it was just the best man available. I can't act like know what I'm talking about when it comes to this guy specifically. I know he's a big guy. I know he specializes in the butterfly stance. But I'm not going to say, or I can't say what he does better than these guys or what these guys do better than him. I just found it interesting that we kind of pushed defense a little further down the board. And then pretty much that is all I have on the league. They have other draft picks, but to be polite, the likelihood of the other draft picks making it to the NHL, because people that know far more than me make these kind of like the Raz post and percent chances of making the league and all that, and everyone that I have not mentioned is under a 1% chance of making the NHL. So I'm not going to go on further. We've already gone on for 80 minutes. And if these guys start developing in the minors, I can bring them up at that point.
Yeah, that's a valid point there, James. And the last thing that we will talk about, well, not really talk about, but more mention, is something that just happened while we were on the show. LeBron James. No, I'm playing.
Don't do that to me, man.
LeBron James is a Detroit Piston, folks. Let's fucking go.
I don't know if I'd love that or hate that.
I would love it. I think. I mean, that'd be fucking
It would
sweet. It
cost
just
a
depends on
lot.
what we'd have to give, really.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we have had multiple Tigers get named as All-Star players slash starters in the last 10 minutes. So Gleyber Torres
Yep.
is going to be a starter. Javi Baez is going to be a starter. And Riley Green is going to be a starter in the All-Star game. So I assume most people kind of saw these coming, but it was just announced as we were on the show. So I figured I would at least mention it. Congratulations to those guys, and congratulations to the Tigers in general for the season that they've been having so far. With that being said, though, that's going to wrap this show up. As always, we appreciate you guys for watching. We know this one was a little bit longer than normal, but that's good because that means we had more to talk about. So a lot of information went down in this show today, and if you missed some of it, just go ahead and rewatch it. It'll be on YouTube within an hour. So, with that being said, you can catch us at MI Sports Media. James is at James underscore Gullet, or no, at Gullet underscore James. Yeah. See, I get it right every time. I fucked it up that
Last
time. I don't
name
know how.
first. It's okay.
Yeah. And then I am at Jace O Sweet, and you can find all of our articles and such things at misportsmedia.com. So we appreciate you guys for watching, and we will see you guys on the next one.